All right. Shopify redirects. If you're thinking about moving your website over to Shopify, this is something you really got to wrap your head around. And we've been digging deep into the BetterHelp doc.
Yeah, they've got some seriously in-depth testing in there.
Yeah.
Stuff that goes way beyond what Shopify puts in their, official documentation.
Which is what we like to see. So picture this, right? You're moving your site, you're so pumped to launch on Shopify, and then wham, broken links everywhere. Customers are frustrated. Not the best look.
No, not at all. That's where redirects swoop in to save the day. They're all about making sure your visitors glide seamlessly from your old URLs to the new digs on your Shopify site. Smooth transition, happy customers.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty of this research. First things first, they tested a ridiculous number of different URL formats. We're talking about 100 different ways to write a URL, all to see how Shopify would handle them.
You'll be pleased to know Shopify aced the test. Mostly. They managed to redirect, get this, 99% of those URL formats.
99%? Seriously, I wouldn't have put money on that. Color me impressed. So what about the other 1%? What tripped Shopify up?
There's one particular format that seems to give it a bit of a hiccup. It's those URLs, with an unencoded semicolon right there after the equal sign.
Semicolons are those sneaky devils. Who knew they could cause such chaos in the world of URLs? But realistically, how often do you actually see URLs like that out in the wild?
Honestly, not that often. It's pretty rare, but still good to be aware of. Especially if you're dealing with, say, an older website or some systems that maybe haven't been updated in a while, they might still be using those kinds of URLs.
Gotcha. Better safe than sorry, right? Now, let's talk about something that would make migrations so much easier. Wildcard redirects. Those are like the holy grail of redirects, am I right?
Absolutely. The magic wand of redirection. Imagine being able to redirect a whole bunch of similar URLs using just one rule. It'd be a beautiful thing.
Sounds like a dream come true. So the million-dollar question. Does Shopify support these magical wildcard redirects?
Here's the thing, not yet. And trust me, it's something a lot of Shopify users, myself included, we've been asking for it for a long time.
Ugh, bummer. It seems so incredibly useful, especially for those massive sites with pages upon pages of content.
It'd be a game changer. But hey, there's always a workaround, right? We'll get into those a bit later.
Okay, so there's still hope. So we've got those semicolons to watch out for, no wildcard support. Anything else we should know before we jump headfirst into the redirect process?
Oh yeah, this is where things get interesting. Shopify is actually doing a little URL autocorrect behind the scenes. Like it's actually rewriting certain URLs, for consistency and all.
Shopify's got our backs, huh? Like a helpful friend tidying up our URLs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Trying to make sure everything's running smoothly. And it's not just semicolons. One of the really interesting things they found is how Shopify handles those URLs, the ones with parameters.
Oh, yeah, those guys, they can be a bit of a head scratcher. What's the deal with Shopify and these parameterized URLs? Parameterized URLs, they're like the workhorses of dynamic content, But man, they can be kind of a pain to wrangle sometimes.
Oh, tell me about it. But the key is understanding how Shopify likes to handle them. And let me tell you, Shopify's got its own way of doing things, especially when it comes to the order of those parameters in your URLs.
So no going rogue with parameter order. Shopify's got its own system. We got to play by the rules.
Pretty much. It actually goes ahead and rearranges those parameters alphabetically in the redirect table. Like say you've got a URL with parameters for color and size. Shopify might just swap their positions just to keep things nice and tidy on their end.
Interesting. But wouldn't that mess things up if, the original order of the parameters was important for some reason? Like for tracking or something?
It absolutely could. That's why this is so important for everyone listening to pay attention. Because Shopify sees each, and I mean each, variation of a parameterized URL, even with just a little order swap, as a totally unique entity.
So you switch up color and size, and Shopify's like, hold up, brand new URL here.
Exactly. And if you haven't gone ahead and set up a redirect for that specific order, bam, broken link. And we all know that's a one-way ticket to Frustration City for your visitors and for your SEO.
Right. Mental note to everyone, parameter order matters to Shopify. Be meticulous, people. Double-check everything.
Can never be too careful. And speaking of being careful, research uncovered another little tidbit about those parameters. What happens when you remove one altogether?
Ooh, good question. You'd think Shopify would just redirect to the base URL without that parameter, right?
Seems logical. But that's not how Shopify rolls, my friend.
Yeah.
Instead of redirecting, you get a lovely 404 error. Again, it all circles back to Shopify treating each variation as its own special snowflake.
So you've got like products awesome shirt color blue, and you ditch the color blue part. Shopify's like, whoa, never seen this page before. 404.
You got it. It's a little counterintuitive at first, but once you get how Shopify thinks, it makes sense.
It does, it does. But this really underscores the need for, you guessed it, even more redirects.
You're getting it.
Yeah.
To avoid those dreaded 404s, you got to make sure you've got redirects in place for all those variations, or send them to a page that actually exists.
Right. No leading people on a wild goose chase. Now, since we're on the topic of limits, I've got a burning question. Did you know Shopify actually has a cap on how many redirects you can create?
Oh, yeah, they do. For the regular Shopify plans, you're looking at a healthy 100,000 redirects, which, sounds like a lot.
It does sound like a lot.
It does, right?
Yeah.
But for those massive, complex sites, it can actually be kind of limiting. Thankfully, Shopify Plus users have a bit more wiggle room. They get a whopping 20,000 redirect limit.
Okay, 20 million definitely gives you some breathing room. But still, a hard limit, it just seems a little strange, Especially considering Shopify's doing all this URL rewriting in the background for consistency. Makes you wonder if each of those rewritten URLs is eating up one of your precious redirects.
Right. It's like, is Shopify really optimizing for our ease of use? Or is there something more going on here? Are those redirect limits there for a reason we don't quite understand?
Food for thought. Okay, so besides the sheer number of redirects, any other gotchas we need to be aware of? Like, what about the URLs themselves? Any character limits or anything funky like that? Character limits for URLs, huh? That's a new one for me. I never really thought about URLs having a character limit. It's not like we're writing novels in the address bar, right?
Yeah, right. But you'd be surprised. Shopify actually has a limit of 1,024 characters for a redirect URL. And yeah, that includes that / at the beginning, just so you know.
Okay, but seriously, 1,024 characters, that's pretty generous, no? I mean, who's out here creating URLs longer than a CVS receipt?
You've got a point. Most people, they won't even come close. But you never know. Those edge cases, think like really complex websites with tons and tons of parameters in those URLs, that's where that limit could sneak up on you.
That's why we're here doing the research, right? Forewarned is forearmed.
Exactly. Speaking of potential headaches, let's talk about the user experience for Shopify's redirects. There were a few areas where they felt things could be a little smoother.
So it's not all smooth sailing in redirect land. What did they find?
One thing they pointed out was how you manage multiple redirects, when they're all going to the same place. Right now, it's a tad clunky. Like, you can't just grab a bunch of URLs, paste them in, and be like, all right, send all these bad boys to this one spot.
That does seem like a pretty basic feature you'd want to have. So how do you deal with that now?
Well, you're stuck with two not-so-great options. You could either create each and every redirect manually, one by one.
Yeah, no thanks. Talk about tedious.
Yeah, not ideal. Or you can use that bulk import method, with this CSV file. It gets the job done, but it can be a bit of a pain to wrangle, especially if you're dealing with a site that has a ton of redirects.
Gotcha. So Shopify, if you're listening, room for improvement there. What else did they note?
Another thing they highlighted was just the lack of information within the redirect interface. Like, it would be super helpful if it actually told you which URLs Shopify has, rewritten for consistency and all that jazz.
Right, like a little heads up would be nice. Just a little, hey, by the way, we tweaked this URL for you.
Exactly. Transparency is key, right? Give users the info they need. It would make things so much easier to troubleshoot. And while we're on the topic of transparency, there's another interesting quirk we haven't really touched on yet. It's those reserved prefixes.
Reserved prefixes, huh? Now you've got my attention. What are those all about?
Well, officially, according to Shopify's own docs, you're not supposed to create redirects that start with certain prefixes, things like apps, cart, products, that kind of stuff. They're considered like reserved URLs, probably for Shopify's own internal use.
Makes sense. Don't want to mess with the inner workings of the machine. But I have a feeling you're about to hit me with a but.
You know me too well. Here's the thing. In a lot of cases, you actually can create redirects using these so-called reserved prefixes, and they work totally fine. For example, they set up redirects for URLs like AppsMeApp or Collections New Arrivals without any issues.
Wait, really? So the official documentation isn't exactly the gospel truth here?
It seems that way. It's like Shopify's got this hidden layer of flexibility that they're not really advertising.
Interesting. So should we all just throw caution to the wind and start using these reserved prefixes like there's no tomorrow?
Probably not the best idea. I mean, It's cool that Shopify's system is a bit more flexible than their documentation lets on,
Hmm.
but relying on undocumented behavior is always a bit of a gamble, right? They could change things up at any time and not tell us.
Yeah, you're walking a tightrope without a net. Might be fine, might not be.
Exactly. So I'd say stick to the documented guidelines as much as possible. But hey, it's good to know there might be a little wiggle room in some cases.
Good to know. Now, one last thing before we wrap up. What about redirects with absolute URLs? Can you use those with Shopify?
You can, absolutely. But there's a catch. You can only use an absolute URL for the destination, the redirect to field.
Okay, so like you could technically redirect someone to a competitor's website if you wanted to.
You could, but why would you? Be a pretty weird experience for your visitors, and probably not great for your SEO either. But hey, the option's there if you want it.
Bizarre, but all right. Note to self, don't redirect to competitors. Got it. So we've covered a ton of ground here. To sum it all up, what are the key takeaways for our listeners? The need-to-knows about Shopify redirects.
I'd say the biggest thing is Shopify's redirect system. It's pretty user-friendly. It's generally very reliable, but it does have its quirks. Be aware of those semicolons, keep that character limit in mind, and test those redirects.
Couldn't agree more. Shopify redirects, they're essential, but they can be a little tricky. But hey, with a bit of knowledge and a little prep, you can totally rock those redirects. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive into the world of e-commerce, folks. Catch you in the next one.